Trust can be a very powerful financial tool, but many people don't understand how they work or when to use them. Today we're meeting with Arno Nell, who will break it down for us in simple terms. Okay, Arno, so let's start with the basics. Many people have heard about trust, but they don't really understand how they work. Can you explain to us, first of all, what are trusts and how do they work?
So, trust is a legal arrangement where assets are administered by the trustees for and on behalf of the beneficiaries of a trust.
Now that we understand trust a bit better, can you explain the different type of trust? I know we have inter vivos trust or discretionary trust and testamentary trust. Can you explain the different type of trust and how do they differ?
Yeah, so in South Africa, we get two types of trust. One is a testamentary trust and then what we call an inter vivos trust. So a testamentary trust is a trust that is created in terms of a last will and testament. It only comes into operation on date of death. It is often used to protect and manage assets on behalf of the beneficiaries. So it is basically a tool that is used to protect assets and manage assets on behalf of the beneficiaries. An inter vivos trust, or what we call a living or a family trust, is a trust that is created during the lifetime of the donor. So this is a very good vehicle to use for asset protection and wealth creation while the donor is still alive. So inter vivos trust, we normally get either a discretionary trust or a non-discretionary trust. So a discretionary trust is just where the trustees have got the discretion in terms of the trust deed to determine how and when they want to make a distribution to the beneficiaries. A non-discretionary trust is where the trust deed prescribes to the trustees how and when they should make distributions to the beneficiaries.
Now that we understand the what, I think it's important to also understand the why. Why would someone set up a trust, and what is the most common reason you see in your practice that your clients set up trusts?
A trust is created primarily for the protection of assets against creditors, and it's a good vehicle to ensure that assets are distributed to the beneficiaries after the death of the donor. And it provides also for individuals, for instance, that are minors or people with disabilities that can't manage their own financial affairs.
I know another big reason why people consider trusts is some tax efficiency. Are there any key tax benefits of creating a trust and operating a trust that you can enlighten us about?
The tax benefits of a trust include estate duty and potential donations tax implications. Furthermore, the conduit principle applies to trust, which means that income and capital gains tax that are generated by the trust can be taxed at an individual's tax rate by making distributions to individuals.
It seems like trusts are sometimes misunderstood. What are the common myths and misconceptions that you see in the industry people make about trusts?
So the first one is that I should only create a trust when I'm wealthy. The truth is that if you want to transfer assets after you become wealthy, it's going to have a massive tax implication in terms of transferring those assets to the trust. The truth is, yes, a trust has a very high income tax rate, but the benefit with the conduit principle is that that tax rate can be reduced by making distributions to beneficiaries.
Now that people have decided that trusts are the right option for them, how do we practically go about setting up a trust? What is the process involved?
I think the first step and the most important one is the drafting of the trust deed. So the misconception is also that there's a trust deed that fits everyone's circumstances. It's very important to customize that trust deed so that it actually meets the client's specific circumstances. Once the trust deed have been finalized and approved by all parties involved, it gets submitted to the master's office, which then registers the trust.
Even with the best intentions, mistakes do happen. What are the most common mistakes you see people make with structuring a trust and then managing a trust?
I think the most common mistakes that people make is that once the trust is registered, they just sit back and let it run its course. So it's very important to firstly ensure that you do meet all the compliance requirements in terms of the Trust Property Control Act, and then also in terms of the trust deed. And then the second one is to ensure that the trust is registered with the South African Revenue Services and that all the necessary compliance requirements are met.
You mentioned that the trusts aren't just for the wealthy, and I think that's a good insight for our audience to have. Are there specific cases where setting up a trust makes more sense than other cases?
A trust in South Africa is very beneficial for basically everyone that owns their own business. And it's important to get the trust structure in place before value is created. The most common structures in South Africa is before you start your business to set up your trust, put the shares of your company in that trust before any value is created.
I know laws and regulations evolve over time. Has there been any changes in recent trust law that people should be aware of?
Yes, I think the two most important requirements is the beneficial ownership reporting. This needs to be done annually with the master's office. And then the second one is the issuing of IT3T income tax certificates to the South African Revenue Services. And that is to ensure that distributions that are made to beneficiaries are actually declared in the income tax returns of those beneficiaries.
Finally, to wrap things up, what would be the key takeaways you would think the audience should take from today's conversation?
I think the most important is that trusts are not just for the wealthy. It's basically for everyone that runs their own businesses. But I think the most important thing is to get your trust structure in place before any wealth is created. And then also to ensure that the trust deed that you draft actually meets your specific requirements.
Perfect. Arno, thank you for your time. And I would say, just to wrap up some key takeaways from today, make sure that when you're putting a trust in place that it is effectively managed in line with the trust deed. Make sure you know which trusts are the right one for you, whether it be an inter vivos trust or discretionary trust or a testamentary trust. Make sure you partner with the right professionals when managing your trust. Stay tuned for more insights on financial education.